Hey guys, you're listening to the Tascha Labs podcast, and as some of you know, I'm obsessed about using tokenization to change how the economy works, right? And in all types of industries and use cases. That's why a while ago I wrote about fan tokens, so sports fan tokens. And if you haven't read the article, the gist of it is that I think they have really disruptive potential to the sports industry. But right now, I don't see a whole lot of utilities, to be frank. And also, I think that this type of token, they're still looking for the product market fit. And maybe they'll get there, maybe not. I really don't know, but I'm like cautiously optimistic about this. All right. But to my surprise, after I wrote this article and half an hour later, I got this message from Alex Dreyfus, who's the CEO of Socios, which if you don't know, if you've been living under a rock, Socios is the largest fan token platform today, all right? So he's a very nice guy. He could have told me to take a hike, but he didn't. He said, quote, I will challenge you on some of your assumptions. So by the way, this is what great founders do, okay? They're incredibly responsive. And then they are very good at turning any kind of negativity and criticism into opportunities. So if you're investing in funders, that's something that you should definitely be looking out for, all right? So, and I love it when people tell me I'm wrong, because I know I have a lot of stupid opinions, because everyone does, right? When people point out where I'm misinformed, it makes me smarter. So that's progress. That's why I invited Alex on the podcast today to talk about fan tokens. We're gonna, cover where we are regarding fan tokens, where Socios is, and how web3 can change the future of sports. But again, when I bring a founder on, it's because I found their project fascinating. All right. I ask questions that potential investors will want to ask a founder to help you form your own opinion. And none of this is financial advice. I hope that's as clear. Okay, let's get started. Alex, how are you today?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation, because you were one of the rare persons to actually really cover fan tokens, and you spent a lot of time on that. And as a founder and as someone who actually part of the team that so-called quote unquote invented fan tokens, at least the way they are today, it's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. So tell us, what is Socios for people who don't know?
So 4.5 years ago, 5 years ago now almost, we started a company called Chili's and Socios. It's technically the same company, but two different products. The genesis was very simple. 99% of sports fans are not in the stadium, not in the city, not even in the country of the team they are supporting. And the question was, what can we create that is both valuable for a fan, and when I say valuable, I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about a service and a utility, and scalable for a team. And we are a strong believer that the future of the fandom is going to move from a passive fan to an active fan industry, where fans are not anymore just spectators, but they are more and more into the community or the brand they are supporting and embracing. And so to achieve that, we invented the concept of fan token. Fungible tokens, they are not NFTs. It was 2018. Not even sure NFT as a word was existing in 2018. And the idea was, let's give a voice to a fan. Actually, as a fun fact, the fan tokens, the original white paper, the fan tokens were called voice token. But when we were starting to pitch it, people thought we were launching a telecom company or a Skype competitor. So we moved from voice token to fan token. And this fan token today, they're just like a membership program, fungible membership program, that give you access to money can't buy experiences and to have a social recognition. Like today, if you follow a team on Twitter, you're an anonymous follower. If you own a token or if you own a digital asset out of that team, suddenly you are part of a community. You have a social status through that. And so that's how it started. And fast forward, let's say 4.5 years later, now we are 300 employees all over the world, 9 offices all over the world. We work with 150 plus sports teams, from soccer teams, of course, which is the majority, but also UFC, Formula One, tennis, rugby, esports, and in US, NBA, some NBA teams and NFL teams, even though we haven't launched tokens yet. And so, yeah, creating a bit of this global leader in the web3/sports, or I would say web 2.5/sports will be more accurate.
Okay, I'm very curious. Like, of course, right now, fan tokens is more of a mainstream. Well, it's not mainstream, but it's more accepted. But a few years ago, when you get started, people must think this is like a crazy idea. What made you like? What made you to see the vision that other people don't see and decided to double down on it?
So 2, 3 years ago, people were asking us, why you don't have any competitors? Well, the answer was simple, because nobody is dumb enough to try to do what we are doing. It's so difficult to actually engage with mainstream/corporate entity that are sports entities. It's very political, it's very complex. Every country is different. Actually, the reason we started first 4.5 years ago was because of our own need. We originally created these tokens because we used to own esports/poker league, and as the owner of franchise and a league, we wanted to create tokens to give power to the fans. But then we realized that instead of trying to convince fans to embrace this on a new sport, we should try to do that on a traditional sports and mainstream sports. We already have a ton of fans, and so we reached out to 2 clubs. Actually, no, we reached out to dozens of clubs in the summer 2018, but our first 2 clubs that signed were Paris Saint-Germain and Juventus, 2 European soccer teams. And there was a leap of faith on their end. There was definitely a leap of faith on our end, because at that time, that was just a PowerPoint and an idea. But here we are. We delivered revenue. We delivered fan engagement. What we do is obviously not perfect, but never was Netflix 10 years or 15 years ago. So it's just a matter of time for us to build more and more on top of what we created. What really makes a difference, I have to admit, and it's a bit sad sometimes, it's COVID. COVID was an accelerator of our business. Why? Because from one day to another, there was no more spectators in a stadium. And so clubs and sports teams asked themselves, what is our business model when we don't have anybody in a stadium? Well, the answer should be the same business model than when you have someone. You should take care of every fans all over the world, even if they are not in your stadium. And that triggered a lot of conversation, and that was a massive accelerator for us.
Right. But all the startups, when they started, people talk about you should solve a genuine problem, right? So at the time, did you think that lack of engagement from fans is a genuine problem? How do you actually pinpoint that this is the problem to solve?
No, the problem to solve is the 99% of sports fans that actually are not connected to their team because they are not in the city. And the fact that the teams are actually focusing more efforts, as they should actually, or as they can, into the people that are in the stadium than the people that are abroad. I'll take Paris Saint-Germain as an example. PSG, very big team, or Barcelona. We just invested $100 million in August to become a shareholder of the digital arm of Barcelona. Barcelona, they have officially 400 million fans, whatever that amount is. But you go in Asia, where I spend a lot of my time. You go in Korea, in Japan, in China, in Thailand, in Singapore, in Indonesia. You have thousands of millions of people who likes the brand. But what can they do except following them on Twitter and buying a fake jersey? Nothing. So we believe that giving them a voice, giving them a recognition of me being a random Joe in Indonesia, in Japan, in Brazil, in Turkey, this is solving a problem. The problem of me being a fan and wanting to be more. But the main problem is not necessarily on the consumer part. The problem is on the business side, meaning that we have sports teams who crave for new revenue stream in order to be more competitive and do not know how to monetize, which means engage, but yet to monetize their global fan base.
So when you gave this pitch, was that a pitch that you gave to the sports teams, and how did they respond?
So that's an improved pitch, but the first one was probably a little bit different and way more naive. Now we have much more track record, and the best ambassadors to pitch what we do are actually the club themselves. And because it's a small industry, everybody talks to each other. That's how we also manage to secure so many IPs, is because we became a legitimate business in that space. And the irony of it is we are way more known in the sports space than we are in the blockchain space or the crypto space. And sometimes it's frustrating for me and for the people in the company. But as I said, I would say something that I hate to be quoted on, but that's the reality is, unfortunately, in sports, everything is about money. But that's also a bless, because that sometimes if you have money, you have at least access to people who will listen to you. If you don't have money, nobody in the sports industry will ever listen to you. If you have money, they will listen. Then it's up to you to be able to convince them that what you want to achieve is right.
Yeah, but at the beginning you didn't have money, right? Or did you have money?
We didn't have money. We were very lucky. In early 18 or mid 18, actually, we did the private. I mean, we launched our token and we did private placement mainly in Asia. So we never done a proper ICO. We didn't do a public offer whatsoever. And we did that in Asia because we were at that time very much focused on esports. And that gave us access to a certain amount of funding and cash to actually kick off, let's say, and launch our product. But then we became profitable. Last year, we became very profitable, which allowed us to not raise money. We are probably one of the rare blockchain company that didn't raise traditional equity money or VC money, and yet we are a B2C business and we're a mainstream business.
Okay, let's talk about the profitability. What's your current business model and where does that money come from?
Well, we sell two things. Well, actually, we sell one thing and we monetize in two ways for now. Our business is to sell tokens. So we issue and we mint Paris Saint-Germain token, UFC token, any teams that you may have that we have in the portfolio, we are the issuers. So we have the exclusive relationship and licensing agreement or partnership agreement with the team to launch that token. And our job is to do a fan token offering, FTO. So we sell a small portion of the total supply, what you would call a drop, or you could whatever it's called. But we sell a small portion of the supply at a fixed cost. Then these tokens become available on the chain. They become available on the market. People buy them on the market if they want to. There is a trading component. These tokens are listed either in our platform. They're listed on Binance and FTX and Hobby and OKX and a few others. And then from that, we are taking trading fees, either as revenue share from the exchanges, which is more difficult, or directly the trading fees generated by our own platform. And that revenue become our top line that we share roughly 50-50 with the clubs. So the more we sell tokens, the more the tokens become available to the market and fan users, crypto native are embracing that product, the more revenue it will generate for the clubs and for us.
So what's the portion of the revenues in terms of initial token sales versus transaction fees right now?
Transaction fees is very small because it's around 5%, I would say. It's still very early. As much as we got a lot of traction last year and this year, the reality is we are at barely 1% of what the potential is in terms of reach, in terms of recognition. Sometimes I say that, and I'm not afraid to say that publicly. We should not get credit for the incredible hype we got last year. The whole market was on fire. It did benefit us big time. Because from every fan tokens, thanks to the NFT hype especially, went a lot in value. We managed to generate hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. That's great. Is it because we were doing our job better than others? No, it's just because we were at the right time, at the right spot. Now, the reality is the first wave of users that come and embrace what we do are by definition crypto native. They are people who understand what we do without us having to explain it. And this is more or less 150 million people in the world. Yet we reach only out of this 150, we reach more or less 1 to 3 million, let's say, currently. Now, like in any cycle of innovation or product launch, the first early adopters, in our case, are crypto native. But in 5 to 10 years, they're going to become more and more mainstream users, more and more casual users that not only cost more to acquire and retain, but also need more education. And that education comes from the fact that in 3 or 5 years, we will have educated, promoted all the utility over time that we envisioned either 3 years ago or that we're going to deliver in the next 2 years. But it's a matter of legitimacy and time. We could not spend $100 million this year in, let's say, marketing campaign and believe that suddenly we're going to get the 10 million or 20 million users we are looking for. This, especially from a fan point of view, they need to see the value. And to see the value, we need time to actually show it.
But like we will talk about that in the future because that's definitely something that people are super interested in is the token value. But let me ask you, like for today, do you have the numbers? So like, what's the customer acquisition cost and how much people spend on average on tokens?
Customer acquisition cost, I will not have it. The average revenue per token. So the problem is on Socios, I will say, I know we publicize that number, so I don't remember which one is it, but let's say it's around $100, just for the sake of the argument. It's not 1,000, it's not $5, it's around 100. But the problem that we have, it's not a problem, it's the network effect, is our tokens are also available on several platforms. So socios.com is the consumer-facing product where today the utility is delivered. In the future, it will be also on different platforms, including the sports team. But today we are the utility. Let's say we are the exclusive utility provider today. But the tokens are also traded on thousands of exchanges, the most reputable one, and that is a revenue generator for us as well. So it's difficult for us to talk about acquisition cost of acquisition because the revenue is actually spread on other platforms. And sometimes we could make more revenue because the token is very much available on a significant platform, therefore very liquid, therefore very tradable for us. So it's a bit biased in that way.
What are some of the performance indicators that you track that you think are most important to you?
What was interesting for us is if the number of people who owns fan tokens and that vote. So first of all, the first utility of what we do, the foundation of what we do is the voting, meaning that we are giving a voice to the fans to choose something that the club is asking. It's not us. The club is asking something that is either not sports, not business, but in the middle, that is sports related, that is fan related. And do we see an uptrend of people voting more and more? The answer is yes. So whoever has fan token of one or several teams is voting more and more often, and that's increase of the percentage of token holders. So that's, I think, as an engagement, that's the most important. Now, what we need to ensure is how do we gamify the behavior of fan token holder, either in our ecosystem or as well in third-party ecosystem. And that's going to be the main challenge, I guess, for the next 2 years. It's to come from a more or less closed environment to a very much open environment. And that's where we will see if success it is or not. I said one thing here. I talked about the fact that token holders own several teams. There is one thing we've learned over the last 4 and 5 years, but it's also something that was confirmed by the sports industry is fans of today and fans of tomorrow are not anymore fans of one team and one sport. They are not exclusive. They are casual consumers. They consume UFC because they like that player. They consume Formula One because it's on Netflix and it's very trendy right now. They consume Paris Saint-Germain because there is Messi. My point is we created a network effect where we have 100 plus teams. And the more we manage to aggregate teams, the more we can create more value for not only the fans, but also the teams that are part of that ecosystem. And that's a very important point for us in the next few years.
Totally. And what's the voting ratio right now? Voting members as part of the token holders?
So we count, the only information I can share, because we don't share everything, but the only information I can share is the percentage of the fan token holders that have their token in the Socios app. So for example, if you have your token on Binance because you're a trader, we don't count you as this quorum. And the average will be between 28 to 35%. Sometimes there is a peak to 55, 60%. And sometimes on also shitty polls, but you're going to have 15% or whatever. But a decent number is around 30 to 40%.
Okay. So let's talk about the tokens. Because this is definitely something like most investors most interested in, right? So how do those tokens generate value?
Depends which token we're talking about. If it's Chili's,
yeah. Well, let's talk about. Okay, let's talk. I want to talk about all of those. Okay, because I see Chili's token, I see SSU, and obviously there's the token for each of the sports clubs.
Yes.
Right.
So SSU is actually it's not a tradable token. It's just loyalty points. So there is no valuation. It's not tradable whatsoever. So SSU is your miles kind of or your XP points that you have, and you can redeem against VIP experiences. So you earn SSU, Socios United. You earn these free tokens every time you do a gamification or you do an action into the app. And these tokens are the one you can redeem against VIP tickets or signed jersey and stuff like this. Now, the two type of tokens of the ecosystem are the following. Chiliz, which till now was the medium of exchange of the platform, meaning that when you go on socios.com in the app or chiliz.net, not available in US, you can use Chiliz as a medium of exchange to have access to the fan tokens, meaning that all the fans tokens are traded and available against Chiliz as a pair. That's number one. So that was the first, let's say, till now, as a medium of exchange. That was the, if you remember 30 years ago or so, when you go in a game arcade in a city, you give your £10, $10, €10, whatever, they give you 10 tokens, and then you can spend these tokens literally in a pinball or in a video game arcade. Here it's exactly the same. You enter into socios.com, you get your Chiliz, either you bought them with a credit card, with PayPal, or with or you bought them on crypto on Binance. Then you put them in your socios.com wallet, and you can exchange them against the teams you want. And this was historically driven mainly by the demand, the market demand, and that's how we grow. And I'm not talking about price because I can't, but I'm talking about the value of the ecosystem. In the next 3 months, 3 to 4 months, it's going to be a little bit different because we're launching the Chiliz Chain 2.0, which is the next iteration of the chain, where today the fan tokens are already minted. It's the chain that is already connected to 20 or 30 exchanges. But that chain is going to become, going to have a new version where Chiliz is going to become the ETH or BNB or Sol, let's say, it's going to become the gas and the governance token of that chain. So till now, Chiliz or Socios/Chiliz were the main contributor of the chain because that's how it started and that's how we got successful in building that network. But in the next 3 to 5 years, we will just be one node, one validator of all that ecosystem. And actually the clubs themselves, the teams themselves, the leagues themselves are going to become the nodes and the validators of the chain. So all the revenue generated by Chiliz as a governance token slash fees, chain fees, will be eventually rewarding teams that become validators. So you could have at some point football teams, soccer teams, UFC, or whatever teams that generate a revenue that is driven by the growth of the Chiliz chain. And that's what we want to achieve, not now, but in the next 3 to 5 years.
So that revenue for the chain will come from the transaction fees?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. And so that's the vision for a proof of stake chain, essentially.
Yes, yes. Proof of authority. We call that proof of authority and staking, yes.
And your stakers, your validators will be mostly the sports clubs themselves.
Yes, originally they were Chiliz token holders, obviously, but then it will grow with the sports properties, and only the governance of the chain will be able to allow to whitelist actually new issuer. What does it mean? It means that only approved companies or wallets will be able to issue assets. The reason we are doing that is to actually kind of have a curated chain where only approved brand, no scam, no fake brands, which for us is important, and most importantly for these teams is important. So there will be a little bit of a curated mechanism through a whitelisting, and only the governance of the chain can vote for that.
Right, so it's a permission blockchain essentially. So
to issue, yes, to issue assets, not the chain. The chain you can have Chiliz and you can get rewarded.
Yes. So let's talk about the fan tokens themselves. So, but obviously those are the products, right? So
yes, exactly.
the products. What are the utilities? What of these products?
So the first utility, as I said, is actually there will be two first utilities. One is the social status. Me owning a token give me kind of a right and a status into the community that I'm supporting. But most importantly, it's the voice. So, for example, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and that's the first one we ever launched, and that was with a TV ad and everything was very cool. The Juventus, which was the second team we signed, they asked their token holders, please choose between ABCD. what is the music you would like to have when we score a goal in the stadium? That may sound that sounds to be trivial for you, but actually you have 50,000 people in the stadium that every time there is a goal, they're listening to the music. Every time you watch the TV, you hear that music. Every time you play EA FIFA game or whatever video games where Juventus is playing, that music is in the game as well. So they chose whatever song, and thanks to Ronaldo at that time, the first day where that music was played and educated, Ronaldo scored 3 times. So the people in the stadium heard it 3 times back to back, and that created a story out of this. My point is the utility is first and foremost about fans having a choice in anything that is not business, because that's not the role of a fan, or sports, because that's not the role of a fan as well. So we have, for example, fans that chose, or club that ask their fans, which number do you want that new player that we just signed is going to have on his jersey? Or we had clubs who ask, between these 3 jerseys that Nike approved, which one do you want to have next season? So all of these small things that suddenly make me part of the brand, wherever I am in the world, I'm part of this, and that's the translation of that token. And that's how it started. Now the question is, how can we add more utility on that? Utility being already the case, 10% discount on the online merchandise shop, or 20%. The more you own tokens, the more discount you have. If you vote every time, if you log in the app every day, if you play some gamification we have, blah, 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 you're going to get your loyalty points. Loyalty points allows you to earn VIP experiences. This year alone, we are giving away 17,000 real life tickets, 17,000. We have a dedicated team in the company to take care of 17,000 tickets, name, standing, and everything. And that's part of being a new membership program that is more for crypto native / geeky / tech savvy today. But the more it will grow in the next 5 to 10 years, the more mainstream it's going to become. And then we're going to develop, of course, more utility around that.
Yeah, so like, what are you going to develop? What should we be looking forward to?
One of the things we're launching, again, utility means everything and nothing, to be fair, because the utility for a fan, the most important is still and will always be being recognized. The fact that I can say to my team that I'm part of it. Now, how do you translate that? You have to translate that if I'm in Vietnam or in Singapore, suddenly, because I own a fan token of Paris Saint-Germain and I go to a Nike shop, I can potentially get 10% in my shop in my city, not in Paris, but in the home city where I live. And that's a utility of getting benefits of owning a digital membership program. Another thing we are doing, it's called live NFT, which is a trademark we have in Europe, where if I own a fan token of Paris Saint-Germain, they are playing tonight, they are scoring a goal, 3 seconds, 1 minute after the goal is scored, randomly, I'm going to receive a NFT, a live NFT of that goal. Not as a moment, not as a highlight, that's not our job, but whatever media we attach to that NFT. And only 0.1, let's say, % of the fan token holders will receive this live NFT. But if I own, at the end of the season, all the goal of that season, then I'm going to be invited to meet the player or earn a jersey. So for us, a fan token is a proof that you are a super fan, a fan 3.0. And the question is, how do you add more and more utility, either by socios, either by the club, or either by sponsors? So we have also a full dedicated partnership team who is talking every day to Nike, Adidas, every sponsor of every teams, and all the other big brands that are more digital savvy in order to try to bring utility to that. Another example, we have a very big soda company that is sponsor of our club who said, hey, I want to be the first retail business to actually give a discount or give a reward if you buy my drink and you are a fan of that team. So there is a lot of things to do. The thing is, what we do takes way more time than anybody else in that space because we are in a regulated environment. We are working with some of the biggest brands in the world who have 100 years old legacy. And we are working in businesses that till now didn't really need innovation. It's the only industry that actually hasn't innovated for the last 30 years. The sports industry is doing the same shit for the last 30 years. So unlike travel, banking, dating, anything else that has been disrupted by the internet space, that's not true in sports today. We are not here to disrupt, we are here to enhance. And our job is try to bring fan tokens as the center or one of the center of that new relationship.
Yeah, so I mean, that's why I think this has disruptive potential, because it has the potential to change some of the business models in the industry, which today comes, the revenues or the value added of the industry comes from sponsorship. It comes from the, media broadcasting rights. So you touched about a little bit of how that sponsorship can be interacting with the fan tokens and bring value to the fan tokens. I think that may be a, valuable area, a valuable channel, promising channel for the future. But then the question is, okay, a lot of the sponsorship today is coming from the media partners, right? Because the media has the content and then entertainment, and attract eyeballs, and that's how you attract sponsorship. The fan tokens in themselves, you hold the token, but you don't really attract attention. I can hold the token, I don't have to do anything with it. There's no entertainment value. You can build some gamification, but we are like at a very early stage of that. So do you think this will be something? What is the value added for the sponsors? What's the attractiveness?
Yeah, so first of all, there is already a gamification, and for that, need to spend more time, unfortunately, into the app. But every time there is a match, you need to check in the app if you own a token of the team. So there is a bit of a gamification. There is milestone, there are rewards, there are status in the app itself. So you have to see what we do as a meta platform, kind of, where we aggregate all of these teams, but at the end, the game is to own all of these tokens and to engage with them into the app. Secondly, in terms of sponsors, we are not in the business of advertisement, and we are not in the business of eyeballs, to your point. What we are doing is rather giving value for whoever spent billions of dollars to that industry. What does it mean? If you are a Nike sponsor and you spend, I'm going to give a random number of at least what I've read publicly, $60 million to be the sponsor of Paris Saint-Germain. You spend $60 million to be the main sponsor of PSG, and then 60 or plus, and then you need to also spend marketing dollars in every country to promote the fact that you are the partner of PSG and few other teams. Now, is there a way for you to actually monetize that, drive traffic into your mall, into your shops in a certain region? Is there a way for you to give an airdrop of PSG tokens to whoever will buy a PSG branded product in Vietnam, in Brazil, or in UK? That Saturday afternoon from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., you will get a free PSG token. So that kind of things, we're going to try that, and we're going to experiment that. And for us and for them, it's about giving more to the fans, giving more to what we call activation. That's the word that is used in marketing, is the activation of that partnership. It's not about trying to get more fans. It's not about trying to have a bigger reach. It's trying to give more to the value that they are spending already as a sponsor. And this, they are craving for that.
Makes sense. So let's talk about the other, business model, which is high growth in the sports-related industries, which is betting. What's your thinking on that? Is there a business model in their line?
So my direct answer would be no. For plenty of reasons. First, because I spent 15 years myself in the sports betting industry. Actually, my business in 2004 was online sports betting in Europe, licensed in UK and then in France and in Europe. And so I've done online sports betting in various markets. And actually, last time I sold my business in 2012 was to a licensed regulated online casino in US. And so gambling is a little bit of background. And because it's my background, my answer is no, for a few reasons. First of all, betting is a regulated business. You can do crypto, you can say it's centralized, blah, blah, blah. It's decentralized, sorry. The reality is online gambling will always have to be regulated, and regulators and internet providers and sports team will do whatever they can in order for you to make sure that it is regulated, because it should be regulated. You should not have a kid being able to do that, and you should not be able to bet on something because it's decentralized in order to influence, which it exists, the outcome of a sports event. Now, for example, those fan tokens are a betting product. The answer is no, because you don't lose your fan token at the end of a match or at the end of a competition. You still have it. So you may lose value if these fluctuate, but you don't lose your stake, you don't lose your product. The reality is, the way I see it is, fan tokens and NFTs as well, but digital asset in general, but let's say fan tokens will become a translation of the, what's the name I used to you call that? The fan sentiment. The fan sentiment towards a brand or even the success of a brand at some point. It's not the case today because there is not enough liquidity, it's not enough, there is a couple of millions of people using that. But the day you have 10 million or 50 million people all over the world, then there will be a pattern, there will be a mechanism where people will trade against event. And that's fine. You will just have to game it and people will do that. But it will never be an alternative, and it should not be to sports betting, which is a very clear business. You bet something, there is an outcome of an event, you either win or lose. We don't do that. But it could be like, for example, in US, daily fantasy, DFS, you could see that as a third or fourth generation of fan engagement. I'm a strong, and I hate to say that publicly, but it's okay. Fan engagement at the end is where you put your money where it's where you put your money to. There is this expression, you put your money where your mouth is. Well, that's fan engagement. I buy a jersey, I bet money, I go to a stadium. This has a cost for me, time and money. And that's fan engagement. Well, tomorrow, fan engagement is also, I'm spending $10 or $1,000 to a team that I'm supporting for XYZ reason. But it doesn't mean that it's betting, even though there is valuation or fluctuation into it.
Sure, but there are ways that token value can be associated with the team's performance. Like I remember you guys were doing some experiments of burning fan tokens when the match has who won the match, that kind of thing. How's that going?
So that was cool. We did that last year. We're gonna do it at some point, probably during the World Cup as well, because we have two national teams, the Portugal team and the Argentinian team. So probably gonna try to do that during the World Cup. Keep in mind that we can't buy back from the market. We have to burn from the treasury. The reason behind that is who will buy back? Is it the club? Yes. Is it us? Who is the one spending the money to buy this back? Besides the legal reason as well. So the reasoning behind it, and it's interesting, is if you look on the next 10 years or 20 years, you could argue that the more performing the team is, the less token will be available over time, because there will be less token in the treasury, and therefore there will be less and less token available to the market, and therefore it could have an impact on the value. But
there is the less token for the team to sell as well if you're taking token out of treasury.
Yes, of course, but then it doesn't matter if the token has more value or not. And if the more people trade, the more it will generate revenue. So you have to assume anyway that in 10 years, there will be no tokens in the treasury to be sold. So the revenue will be mainly generated by the trading fees and by the token that will be retrieved against services and digital services that will be sold.
Let's talk about competition. Like, who are your competitors today?
I know it's weird to say that because it's very rare, but we don't have competitors.
You don't?
No, we don't. No, I mean it. We had competitors in what? Creating tokens? Well, everybody can create tokens. That's not the point. Do we have a competitor that provides a platform and utility for fan tokens? The answer is no. It doesn't exist. And there is a reason for that, because when we launched what we were doing 4.5 years ago, nobody believed, or barely anybody believed in what we were doing. And so nobody was ready to catch up with us. Now we are in a point where there is a massive entry barrier. We have 150 teams. We work with most of the biggest teams in the world. We are a legitimate operator. It doesn't mean we are perfect. It doesn't mean that we are doing everything right, or at least right as we would like to do. But at least we are a big operation. We have more than 40 employees dedicated to talk to all the teams and work with them as well. This is a massive infrastructure. And so we don't have direct competitors. But our biggest competitors are actually the teams themselves, and in a way that we need to push them out of our comfort zone. Because the competition for us is not about someone creating another token. Who cares? We have 150 plus. It's about us trying to provide more utility to the fan token holders. That's actually the real competition, is how do you push that? And our biggest enemy in that way are the teams, because they are not used to have a third-party partners that is generating revenue for them, that is trying to tell them, hey, can we do this? Can you do that? Please, let's do it. Let's push it. And that's our biggest challenge every day. It's not anymore about oh, we haven't signed that team, someone else has. There is no teams actually right now. There is 5 teams maybe we haven't signed that we would like to have, but that's it. So we won that battle, but that's the easy one because it was money driven and being able to say it. Now we need to win the battle of delivering the best product and delivering the best utility and sustainable.
Well, you are obviously very good at pushing because you sign up all these, as you said, historical teams, been there for a long time, haven't innovated for a long time, and you push them to actually, partner with you to do this. So what's the secret of being able to do that?
I think a few things. I hate to say that, but we are between friends on that podcast, so that's fine. Money is a key component. The sports industry is driven by money, and if you are well funded or if you have a business model that's going to drive new revenue stream to a club, that matters. It's sad, but it is what it is, and you have to embrace it. Actually, that's number one. Number two. We are not here to change the world. We didn't say to all of these guys that, hey, we are here to pitch Bitcoin, decentralization, DAO, and all of these things. This is not our narrative. Our narrative is you have 99% of your funds that you are not monetizing today, and we are one of the partners that's going to help to monetize that, and therefore creating an incremental revenue to whatever you do on your own. And for that, we're going to use blockchain. We are not a crypto exchange. We are not a wallet. We are not a layer one chain that wants to conquer the decentralization world. We are not here to replace the dollar. That's not our job. Really, our job is to become a product that use blockchain and crypto, but at the end, it's a mainstream product for the sports industry. And I guess maybe because we were European and because we started with soccer, we were less exposed in US, less exposed to different needs. So at the end, soccer is the biggest sport in the world. So you can live without the US for 4 years or 10 years and still being very successful globally, because in Indonesia, in Brazil, in Turkey, in Japan, in Korea, and China, everybody's fan about football or soccer. Now we are looking at US in a different angle. We have a 25 people office in Miami. We've signed more than 80 teams, from NBA teams, NFL teams, the whole MLS as well, UFC, etc. So, which is a different topic. But my point is, there is a network effect. There is a matter of trust as well. People trust us and they call their friend or colleagues or ex-colleague to another team. Hey, do you know these guys? Or who they are saying. All of that narrative did matter a lot for till now, at least.
So, but if I'm a sports team and I already have massive global offering, right? Why would I partner with you? I can just go issue my own token because the lead generation is going to down by me because I'm selling to my own fans. Why would I need you?
That's the biggest mistake, and that's why clubs cannot do it. Because clubs do not own their fan. Clubs are not media. They have 36 million followers for one team we are working with. They can tweet as much as they can or they want about us. We'll create 10,000 accounts or whatever. Clubs are not media. They have no reach. The best way to reach fans of a club is actually to buy advertising on ESPN, CBS Sports, or whatever online platforms. And so the thing is, at the end, the business of a club, it's to run a sports club, not to run a web3 innovation. Clubs don't spend money on innovation, period. When they get a printer in the company, usually it's a sponsor printer that gives them a discount, and that's why they are choosing it. So they're not going to hire 20 people to do KYC, regulation, to do customer care. They are teams that are very strong in one country, but they don't have offices all over the world to promote their brand. Again, we're not talking about creating a product for the 40,000 people that are in a stadium. We are talking about creating a product that's going to increase and create an incremental revenue in any other countries where they actually have no resources. So they have, that's the first question. Why cannot do it ourselves? Well, please do. But the answer is they realize that it's not their job. They can create their own page on their own website, yet they have a Facebook page or a Twitter account or a TikTok account, because that's where the people are, that's where the network effect plays. And that's a false narrative that because I have so-called 300 million fans or I am a powerful brand, that I actually have an audience. That's not true.
So talk about reach. This is actually one of the questions that people on Twitter who are following this interview are very interested in is how are you going beyond the crypto natives? How are you reaching the mainstream audience to get them to buy sports tokens?
So this is a matter of time. For example, we right now, as I said, we have 1.6 million registered users, which actually in a crypto space is not that bad. Outside of exchange and wallets, it's actually a very big, decent number. We are, I mean, it's great. But when you look at the brands we have, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous, period. And yet, all of these brands are talking about us all the time. We are on some of the jersey at some point. In US, we are on most of the stadiums, etc., etc. So it shows you actually that sponsoring / reach is not the same than getting users that wants utility. But to get user that wants utility, you need to prove that you have utility. You need to have people to know that what you do matters. Till now, they don't know because of crypto. We have a lot of, in some countries, when you say crypto or tokens or NFTs, you are accused of a Ponzi scheme and a scam and whatever. So you have to overcome this. That's number one. Number two, we have to educate about use cases. I'm pretty sure that before you looked at us, you didn't know that we had done, I don't know, 500 or 1,000 survey that actually did matter for the fans that were involved. And the reality is most of people don't know that. And the reality is most of people of the teams still don't know that. So the only way to achieve that it's to still doing that in the next 5 to 10 years. It's not about doing it like one big thing. It's about doing it for the next 10 years. And every day you will have a new fan coming, oh, I heard about this. And I've seen it because I've seen socials everywhere. But it's a matter of time. That's the only thing we cannot buy. It's time and legitimacy.
What's your wish list for the next, let's say 5 years?
Just to continue, well, actually, my wish list is that I will still be in this industry because I have a 4-year-old kid, and I hope that by being in this industry in 5 years, I will still have access to all the VIP cool stuff that I have access today, so he will be happy. But that's my personal wish list. My professional wish list is just that having the same team that we have today. We have a great management team. We have great colleagues that are really passionate about what we want to achieve and what they want to achieve, and being able to sustain this and having hundreds and hundreds of sports team, being a mainstream brand, having 20 million users, and that's, and maybe more, but that's the wish list.
So, a kind of narrative in the sports innovation today is that it's so hard to work with existing teams because they have existing vested interests, existing ways of how to do things. So we're seeing some like new sports leagues that are governed by DAO or web3 native. Those are spraying up these days. What do you think of those?
Actually, I liked your question, and because you answer to some one of my points is, in a way, today fan tokens are a DAO. DCO, decentralized, centralized, semi-autonomous organization. I don't know what we could call them. But we do that with legacy brands. And what we do works with legacy brands because we work as a corporate entity, we understand them, and that works. Can we create a token? Can we create a full DAO for an existing big team? The answer is no. I don't believe in that. I think it's an utopia. I think it will not happen before 10, 20, even more. I mean, why a multi-billionaire owner will decide to suddenly sell his team to a DAO? And who will fund the DAO the day that the team will need more money? Because unlike what people think, sports is actually mainly a losing business model. People who buy teams, they don't do that to make money. They do that to build a network. It's a social status as well. Same way you want to be a fan. If you're an owner, it's a social status. So it's not a business model per se. But I do believe in DAO for new teams. I do believe in DAO which is actually your plan in 5 years, is maybe we create a new soccer teams or an esports team or a poker team, which is our first love. Maybe we create a new thing that will be fully so-called decentralized and run by the fans. But because, as you said, we will have no legacy, it's feasible. Anything that has a legacy today, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to envision this to change to something more decentralized because it doesn't make any sense.
So what kind of sports do you think will be more suitable for the, DAO controlled model?
Eh, you could argue theoretically esports, but yet, for example, in esports, we work with 6 esports teams, with League of Legends teams, Counter-Strike, StarCraft, and some of the biggest games of these teams. Yet, it's difficult for now. We haven't. I would say esports we failed for now, for the time being. Maybe because our product is too mobile oriented and less PC gamer oriented. That's possible. I love football or soccer, obviously, but in which league and which league will allow that? How it will work? I don't know. Maybe you create a new league completely run by this. We were working on something called the Socios Cup. We announced it actually last year, a Socios Cup, which will be an exhibition event where you have like 4 or 6 teams, part of a roster, and this team will be fan controlled just for these 2 weeks or 1 week of event. And that's cool. You choose who's playing, the draft 11, the format of the game, and that kind of things. And that's purely entertainment, and people will definitely pay for that. For a long year league/sports, it's a bit more difficult because I'll give you an example. There is a lot of money in sports. It's great. But for example, if you need an agent, if you need to vote, to ask your fans to vote, should we buy that player? And that become a public vote by definitions, the blockchains, marketing, etc. Great. But if you need to ask your fans or your owners or token holders, should we buy that players? What tells you that there is not the agent that's going to try to push and buy tokens in order to rig the vote? What tells you that there is not a competitive team that's going to buy tokens to rig against the team to actually keep that player from his team? So there is a lot of problems around that. And I don't think it's feasible. I think it's an utopia. I think it's great. It's dreamy. But I think it's not happening anytime soon.
And also the sports operation you run a sports team, it's a complicated operation. There's so many decisions to make, like it's a proper company. And
you have a business decision, you have sports decision. These are 2 different layers. Actually, when we define fan token today, I usually call it, you have the share of ownership and then you have the share of influence. The share of influence or the fan token, they give you 0 ownership whatsoever and 0 exposure to any economical value of the team. Yet they give you a right, or sort of a right, or of an influence towards the team. For example, Manchester United, or even Juventus. Juventus, the Italian football team, is a listed company. It's $1 billion listed company. When you own a Juventus share, what can you vote every year? The General Assembly to validate the accounts, and if there is an increase of capital, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. But as a fan, you don't get anything. Now, if you own a fan token of Juventus, you actually can vote on questions that the club are going to ask you. So these are 2 different needs. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, goes back to my point, you go from a passive fan to an active fan. We think that the layer of influence is going to be tokenized, not the ownership. I'm actually against tokenized ownership in that way. I'm for the fan influence and fan tokenization. And that's what I believe is going to win.
Why are you against the tokenized shares?
Ownership for shares, because they are shares, therefore they are securities, therefore they are exactly what you can get today. Most of biggest sports teams are already listed. So there is 0 innovation. We are just replacing shares by tokens. So what?
Okay. So talking about securities, obviously, a lot of projects are very concerned about regulation uncertainties, especially in larger countries. So what's your thinking on that?
As someone who comes from the online gambling, I've kissed let's say, embraced regulation for 15 years of my life, both from a payment point of view, but from also gaming regulators. And so when we created the company 4.5 years ago, or 5 years ago, we were designed already as a company to embrace regulation. So the way we developed our product, and that's why I say it's way more 2.5 than 3.0. That sounds a bit gimmicky, but that's true. We are way more ready for that. We got licensed in several European countries. We got letter of comfort from more than 15 regulators all over the world about what we do. We cannot afford, Socios and Chili's cannot just afford to do something that is not right, because we're working with the biggest brands in the world. And at the end, they will be the one that will be tainted. And that kills sometimes some of the ideas or flexibility we have, but that's the price to pay to actually work with these ones.
Okay, that's great. So I'm looking through some. We got a pretty long list of questions from Twitter, but I'm just like picking some relatively interesting one. Oh, here's an interesting one. Ask Alex why we still don't have German teams.
So, so Germany, two things: regulation and sports. In terms of sports, football teams in Germany have what we call the 51% rule. Nobody can own 51%. So there is already a fan ownership mechanism that exists actually in Germany. That's number one. So German fans don't really care about new system like ours, and that's okay. The second point is the regulatory. Fan tokens, as per the regulator, BaFin, or utility token. We have the letter signed since 2019. We have this. But because you can trade them against chilies, that become an exchange potentially in Germany. And therefore, we haven't, for now, we have decided to not be both licensed and working in the German territory till there is a more European regulatory framework like MiCA, which was voted yesterday and will come in force in 2024. So the reason is mainly regulatory. Second reason is till now, we have barely zero German users coming into our platform, meaning that German users don't even care about what we do, even if we don't have German teams. So we don't think it's a significant market for us right now.
Makes sense. All right. So, and also, obviously, investors care about token performance. I know you cannot comment on that, right? But let's just say, if you are a token investor, right, and you look at why the sports, you look at it like sports tokens, fan tokens have done pretty well in the last few months, and you're like scratching your head, why is that? Some people say it's the World Cup. It's like, I don't know why. Like, what's your guess?
As an entrepreneur, I will say that it's time that people pick up on what we are doing, because we are we are not doing more today than we were not doing last year. That's number one. So maybe there is a bit of frustration here. There is maybe a World Cup effect, which we are not the force behind it, but it's just that the market does what the market does. So if they think that we should be more visible during World Cup, well, so the market decide. There is, I guess, and I hope at least, that there is a couple of things. One, the NFT/sports hyped kind of up and dried up for the time being. So there is a need of a new narrative, at least in the space, and we provide that new narrative. Still sports, but different product. Even though we were there before, still we were flooded last year, and we were invisible because of the NFT hype, which was interesting. And secondly, because maybe people, and I hope people, believe in not only the vision that we have as both fan token and socios, but also the cheese chain that we are building, that we are creating an ecosystem that eventually will be decentralized with all the sports industry and all the fans, and eventually a fan that could own chilies could be rewarded as a trading fees, because it's part of an ecosystem. And that goes back to some of the narratives that you are pushing and educating your audience, is how do you move value to the fans themselves? And we are one answer. We are not the only answer, but we are one answer to that. And it's still going to take 5 years to get where we want to be, but at least step by step or year after year, we are a little bit closer.
And finally, how do you see, like, let's say in a decade, if we are in 2032, how is the sports industry looking different from today?
I believe big brands, actually the danger is big brands becoming bigger and bigger. And that's one thing we as a company, we need to be careful, because the so-called local teams will have less investment opportunity, less innovation resources than the big teams. And the big teams, hopefully, will give more and more to their fans. So I will have my mobile phone, I'm watching on TV or whatever TV it will be in 10 years, who knows, but I will watch something, and I will interact live either before or during the match, and somehow I have an impact. Not on the game itself, that should not be the case, but either on something that appears on the screen, either on a relationship or there is like a community-based features where all the fan token holders that are connected at the same time and watching the TV, and because I can do a recognition with my phone of what's on the TV, then I will have a proof of attendance or virtual attendance. There is a lot of things we can create where fans can be rewarded. Technology can enhance and scale that globally, but teams cannot lead that. It has to be startups. Us, others, doesn't matter. And I hope that in 10 years, we will be what we are today, which is one of the leaders in web3 or blockchain-based innovation in the sports industry. And we'll have thousands and thousands of millions of users that will use our product and have fun out of it.
Well, Alex, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Tascha.